Some people drift away slowly. Replies get shorter, plans get postponed, energy shifts, but others don't drift. They disappear. No warning, no final argument, no dramatic ending. One day you're talking, the next day you're blocked, muted, unfollowed, erased. They cut everyone off. And when that happens, people usually react in extremes. They're toxic, they're selfish, they think they're better than everyone. They couldn't handle real relationships. But here's what's interesting. Cutting everyone off is rarely random, and it's almost never simple. Because psychologically, when someone removes everyone from their life at once, they're not just leaving people, they're responding to something internal. Sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's identity crisis, sometimes it's exhaustion, and sometimes it's the only way they know how to feel safe. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who cut everyone off, not to justify it, not to condemn it, but to understand it, because extreme behavior always has a deeper root. Part 1. The illusion of control. Let's start with the surface feeling. When someone cuts everyone off, the first emotion they often feel is power. Think about it. You decide who has access to you. You control communication. You remove unpredictability. No one can disappoint you if they can't reach you, and in that moment, distance feels empowering. It feels like, I'm choosing myself. I'm done tolerating nonsense. I'm protecting my peace. And sometimes that's true, but psychologically, something else is happening. The brain is seeking relief. Social conflict creates stress. Misunderstandings create uncertainty. Emotional vulnerability creates anxiety. When you cut someone off, the stress drops immediately. The discomfort stops. The conversation ends. The tension disappears. Your nervous system relaxes, and your brain learns something very quickly. Leaving makes me feel better. The problem? Short-term relief does not equal long-term resolution. Avoidance always feels powerful at first, but it can quietly train you to escape instead of process. And if someone repeats that pattern enough times, cutting people off becomes their default coping mechanism. Not because they're cruel, but because it works, temporarily. Part 2. Hyper-independence isn't strength, it's adaptation. You've probably heard someone say, I don't need anyone. I'm better alone. I can only rely on myself. On the surface, that sounds strong. But in psychology, extreme independence often forms after repeated emotional disappointment. If someone grew up in environments where their feelings were dismissed, their vulnerability was punished, their trust was broken repeatedly, or their support system was inconsistent, their brain adapts. It concludes, depending on people is risky, and instead of taking the risk again, they eliminate the need entirely. This is called hyper-independence. It's not that they don't want connection, it's that connection feels unstable. So cutting everyone off feels safer than waiting to be let down again. And here's the subtle part. Many hyper-independent people genuinely believe they're just strong. They don't see it as fear, they see it as standards. They see it as boundaries. But if every conflict ends in elimination, it's not always empowerment. Sometimes it's unresolved attachment wounds. Part 3. All or nothing thinking. Another psychological layer is cognitive distortion, specifically black and white thinking. In this mindset, relationships exist in extremes. Someone is either loyal or fake, supportive or toxic, safe or dangerous. No human nuance, no room for imperfection. So when someone makes a mistake, misses a call, forgets something important, or disagrees strongly, it's not processed as, that hurt. It's processed as, you betrayed me. And once someone is mentally categorized as unsafe, they're eliminated. This type of thinking is emotionally intense. It often develops in people who've experienced unpredictable relationships in the past. If chaos was normal, certainty becomes survival. So they create certainty by cutting ties instantly. It feels decisive, clear, clean. But real relationships are rarely clean. They're layered, imperfect, sometimes frustrating, and if someone cannot tolerate emotional gray areas, they will repeatedly reset their social circle. Part 4. Avoidant attachment. Attachment theory explains a lot about why people pull away. People with avoidant attachment styles often struggle with emotional intimacy, feel overwhelmed when relationships deepen, withdraw when expectations increase. Closeness feels good at first, but when vulnerability increases, so does anxiety. They may start thinking, what if I disappoint them? What if they see my flaws? What if they need too much from me? What if I lose myself? And instead of expressing those fears, they distance. Sometimes gradually, sometimes completely. Cutting everyone off can be an extreme version of avoidant coping. It prevents dependency. It prevents emotional exposure. It prevents the possibility of rejection. But it also prevents depth. And over time, avoidant patterns can create profound loneliness, even if the person would never admit it. Part 5. Burnout and silent resentment. Not everyone who cuts people off is emotionally avoidant. Some are emotionally exhausted. Imagine someone who is always the listener, the problem solver, the reliable one. They rarely say no. They rarely express frustration. They rarely set boundaries. They tolerate until they can't. Resentment builds quietly. Unspoken needs pile up. And instead of having difficult conversations, they explode inward. They withdraw from everyone at once. Not because everyone was terrible, but because they never learned how to say, "I'm overwhelmed. I need space. I feel unappreciated." So instead of adjusting relationships, they delete them. It feels cleaner than renegotiating boundaries. Part 6. Identity reinvention. There's another psychological motive that's less emotional and more existential. Reinvention. Sometimes people cut everyone off because they are trying to become someone new. New habits, new ambitions, new self-image, and old relationships reflect old versions of them. Maybe those friends knew them when they were insecure, unmotivated, lost, dependent, and every interaction reminds them of that past identity. So cutting people off becomes symbolic. It says, "I'm not that person anymore." It creates psychological separation. The risk? If growth always requires social elimination, the person may never learn how to evolve within connection. And maturity isn't just about upgrading yourself, it's about upgrading how you relate to others. Part 7. Control versus connection. At the core of all of this is a tension between two human needs: control and connection. Control feels safe. Connection feels vulnerable. Control is predictable. Connection is messy. When someone cuts everyone off, they are choosing control. But humans are wired for connection. Long-term isolation often leads to increased rumination, heightened anxiety, emotional numbness, distrust of future relationships, and then a narrative forms. But sometimes, what they're feeling isn't peace, it's emotional shutdown. And shutdown can feel calm, but it's not the same as fulfillment. Part 8. When cutting people off is healthy. Now let's balance this. There are situations where cutting someone off is healthy. Consistent disrespect, manipulation, abuse, repeated boundary violations. Distance can be self-protection. The difference lies in intention. Healthy detachment is intentional and specific. It says, "This behavior is harmful, and I am choosing distance." Unhealthy detachment is global and reactive. It says, "Connection feels uncomfortable, so I'm removing all of it." One builds strength, the other avoids discomfort. And that distinction matters deeply. Let's wrap this up. If someone has cut everyone off, the real question isn't, why are they so cold? It's, what are they protecting? Their peace, their ego, their wounds, their identity. Because behavior is rarely random. It's protective. And if you're someone who has cut everyone off before, ask yourself honestly, was it clarity or was it escape? Did you communicate first or did you disappear? Did you set boundaries or did you burn bridges? Growth isn't about never walking away. It's about knowing when to walk away and when to work through discomfort instead. Because sometimes cutting everyone off is strength. And sometimes it's fear wearing a confident mask. If this resonated, there's more depth we can explore. We can break down why people ghost when things get serious, why emotional detachment feels addictive, or why some people sabotage closeness right when it gets good. Let me know which direction you want next. I'll see you in the next one.